Director Zack Snyder has made no secret of the fact that his new two-part sci-fi film Rebel Moon was originally imagined as a Star Wars project, with the filmmaker even pitching Lucasfilm boss Kathleen Kennedy on his vision for a trilogy before Disney acquired Lucasfilm in 2012. Reflecting on that pitch during a chat with IGN from his Los Angeles home in November, Snyder had a few things to say on the matter.
I think in a lot of ways it's better for the movie that I ended up having to do it outside of the Star Wars universe, because I think that there's a lot of rules that I would have had to have broken of, like, Star Wars canon, for instance.
I don't want no trouble.
With its swearing, violence, and implied sex, Snyder's upcoming Rebel Moon duology would certainly have proven too adult for the Star Wars franchise, which didn't even acknowledge that its characters had sex lives until the series Andor. But Snyder says he didn't quite realize how much his saga deviated from the norms of Star Wars until he finally sat down to write the initial screenplay.
Shh, one moment. I do love this part.
Because there was never a script, it was always just a pitch, and I was just a big Star Wars fanatic. It wasn't necessarily like a certain thing I wanted to see in this sort of Star Wars universe, but it was more that I just loved the iconography. I won't say I was lucky, but I just knew that in the end would have been like a little cage that I was living in. So it allowed me to do a lot more kind of freaky stuff, I think, in this movie than I think would have been possible if I was in that box. Though, I'm still a big Star Wars fan. That's just how it is.
It's a new age for the universe.
Freed from the shackles of an existing franchise's lore and fan-base expectations, Snyder set about crafting a story, with the final script for Part 1 credited to Snyder, Kurt Johnstad, and Shay Hatton, about a rebel who forms a ragtag band of badasses to fight an evil empire. While there is still a healthy dose of visual and narrative homages to Star Wars in Rebel Moon, Snyder ultimately drew from a wide array of sources to build his own galaxy far, far away. Just as Star Wars blends elements of sci-fi, fantasy, and various world mythologies, so too does Rebel Moon. One of the alien species depicted in Rebel Moon is a winged creature very similar to the griffins of European mythology. This creature is called a Bennu, and in an extended exclusive clip from Part 1, we see it in action as an indentured servant named Tarek, played by Stas Nair, attempts to tame it so that it can be flown.
Drop your leads and clear out.
Snyder pointed out an Easter egg in this scene to us.
One detail to notice is that when Tarek is looking at the Bennu, he, on his little teeny amulet, which is a really teeny detail, there's a little one on his necklace. He's not on his homeworld now, but these creatures come from his homeworld. He has a really deep connection and understanding to those creatures, which you'll see a little bit, another taste of it in the next movie. But it was that kind of stuff, those details, that understanding of who Tarek was and where he came from, that allows the sort of detail of the scene.
The language Tarek speaks to the Bennu is his mother tongue, a language that Snyder says was developed by the film's linguistic expert and draws in part from Stas Nair's native Russian.
It allowed him to really be natural with the language, If you have an aptitude toward a certain way of phrasing or sound shapes, those make the language easier to speak, of course.
Beyond Star Wars, Snyder also cites Heavy Metal magazine and films ranging from Excalibur to The Magnificent Seven and The Seven Samurai as other core influences on Rebel Moon. Fittingly, George Lucas was similarly heavily inspired by the films of Akira Kurosawa when he created Star Wars.
I was always a big fan of Kurosawa growing up, very inspired by the way he used watercolors and drawing to kind of inform what he was going to do with the shot making and with sort of visualization. And I have a similar sort of approach to the way I shoot. And, frankly, those movies, Throne of Blood, whatever, were a big influence on me just in pretty much all the movies I made.
Who among you is willing to die for what you believe?
As the script progressed, Snyder and his co-writers developed the mythology and backstory of the Motherworld Empire and its long-ruling royal family, as well as the various realms they dominate.
Do you know the story of the Princess Issa?
We had to back everything up. The mythos that we were starting to create around the details of the world. It was the details of the world that really started the process of building a real cohesive and mythologically consistent reality, it was difficult. It was complicated and difficult. And what we wanted to really be careful of is not to paint ourselves into a corner with the canon, because canon of this universe becomes the sort of Rosetta Stone that everyone has to go to if we're doing, say, a podcast or a comic book or an animated short or whatever we're doing. They need a Rosetta Stone or a touch point where they can go like, okay, that's law, so that we can't break that. And that's why we've really been trying to expand out all those ideas so that as we go forward, we don't go contradict ourselves.
Can you write him?
Yeah.
Time will tell what precise shape any future expansion of Rebel Moon may take. For now, viewers can discover the world that Zack Snyder and his team built when Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire, launches on Netflix on December 22nd, with Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver, following on April 19th, 2024.